The name of this exercise we're going to call it.
I call it the Jazakallah circle.
Jazakallah circle. Oh, that's right. I did this without. Very awkward. Just kidding.
Okay. Put yourself in a circle with the people of your group. Circle, circle. Okay. Put your arms around the people in your group. These are your fellow Muslim brothers and sisters. Okay. All right. So, okay, here's how we'll start. The person who alphabetically, in the English alphabet, is first, figure out who you are.
I don't know who I am. That's a deep question.
Okay, so figure out who person number one is. Have you figured out person number one?
My name goes first.
Who's the first person?
I'm really tall, so don't worry about it. Trying to figure out who I am.
Wait, K. K is first.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. Okay, who's first in your group?
A. All three are A's.
But we chose Nadim to be first.
Who's first? Who's first in your group? Amina? She has like 50 A's at the beginning. Who's first in your group? Okay, who's first in your group? Okay, Ifat is first. All right, so here's what you're going to do. Person number one, look to the... You guys are like not holding each other? Yeah. Person number one, look to the person to your right, and name that person, meaning find out what their name is, and say, may Allah reward you for, and then fill in the blank. And then person number one goes to the next person in the group, may Allah reward you for blank. Person number one goes to the other person in your group, may Allah reward you for a blank. Once person number one has one by one did all three people, the person to his or her right, same thing. Okay. Got it? So each person, one by one, is going to say, may Allah reward you for something. Okay. Again.
Okay, so Mary.
And you have to name the person, so if you don't know their name, you have to find out their name.
May Allah reward you for having such a beautiful heart and being so such an amazing, person. Having a beautiful heart. Mani, may Allah reward you for your organizational nature.
Wait, organizational nature?
Organizational nature. And being such a great reminder for me on, how to stay true in the path and deed. And Korean, oh goodness. Okay.
She's like, where do I begin?
I think
our circle had enough.
Yeah, please go back.
You can
Keep
go
going.
circle.
Example. This is example A. Go.
Korean, Jazakallah khair for being such a reminder of Allah's wonderful for me.
You're done, you can sit down.
That's
You've already done everybody?
Psychotic.
Everyone did everybody.
Still on the first one here.
Mary.
Money. May Allah bless
It helps to kind of know each other.
Perveen Auntie. May Allah bless you for bringing smiles and joy to my heart every time I see you. Auntie, may Allah.
When I do this exercise, sometimes with younger guys, meaning age 15 and younger, they all start crying. Because they're not even used to being complimented. Right.
Even being in that intimate space,
Yeah?
that close, can be like a little.
Absolutely.
I have a comment.
Yeah, please.
Omer. So throughout the last 5-10 years, as I've been kind of reading more and more, and especially with the first time you gave this class, it really became very apparent, like the importance of companionship and togetherness, right?
Absolutely.
And so, they say Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam will burn the houses of those people that have not joined the Fajr prayer, right?
Yeah, sure.
And the importance of actually going to prayer and actually praying in Jummah.
Yeah.
The importance of going to Jummah prayer, and if you don't go 3 times, you're actually maybe out of the fold of Islam, right?
Or you become negligent and so forth. Yeah,
Right. And so the importance of companionship. Now, when I went to the Hajj, the most pure and the most most manifest form of that companionship you see in Hajj. And it actually dawned on me at that point, like as I was on our way back, like why this is so important. I mean, everything that you mentioned, that, you know, you look at Surah Wal-Asr, right? The togetherness. And first two commands are for Allah. The first command that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to people is for togetherness, right? Is the companionship. And so if we look at where we started when we were first created, and this dawned on me like literally on our way back from Hajj, that if you look at the when we were first created with Adam alayhi salam, we were all created as one big universal soul, right? That's the point in our existence that we were closest to Allah. Our hearts were in complete satisfaction, complete happiness, complete security, and our hearts longed for that because that's where we were. Right? And so the importance of companionship in Jummah prayer, the importance of companionship in doing prayers at the masjid, it kind of emulates that togetherness, right?
Absolutely.
And the Hajj is the most profound example of that togetherness, because you are there with the universal soul of today, doing the exact same thing at the exact same time to the exact same creator at the exact same place. You know? So it's the most profound manifestation of the universal soul that occurs every year. You know, and this is what you're talking about. You know, it's
You know, I think we focus a lot in this class about how our actions affect our heart, and we talk a lot about the heart. When I was listening to Hussein Sattar's lectures on Tasawwuf, he was saying this thing where it was interesting because he was saying, do what you're told to do, basically. And a lot of times we say, well, when I pray, I feel more at peace. And he was kind of like, it doesn't matter what you feel, you just do it. And I felt like he almost took like the heart out of it, like he was making it almost robotic. That's a sense that I got. I just didn't know how to take that.
I think the paradigm he's speaking from is not so much the effect focus, but as part of my transformation that I work to fulfill it. Meaning, if my goal is to pray so that I feel peace, prior to that, my goal should be out of obedience. And a consequence absolutely can be peace. Or a consequence can be, you know, that I feel ecstasy even, right? But my primary function for praying is obedience to Allah.
Obedience comes first.
He just held the Quran every day, even though he didn't
Yeah,
know how to
exactly.
read it. Just because he knew that was the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he didn't know how to read, but he held the Quran.
And if
But that seems like it's more from the heart, like out of respect, and rather than just robotic.
No,
If it's already assumed that you're
Because I
doing
mean-
it out of obedience, then by all means. But what I'm getting is that he's saying that make sure that the primary
Sometimes your
purpose
actions
is...
precede what your heart feels. That's like
Okay.
a common saying. But I don't know. I mean, you've listened to the lectures.
I have,
What
but
do you-
see, the way I take it is, I was looking for this answer for why the Hajj is an experience where you come out as a baby,
Okay.
right? And so I went to Hussein Sattar's lecture on you know, the Hajj, all the manasik and all this stuff. And so I asked him a simple question. I said, listen, you know, why is it that when you're doing this, the stoning of the shaitan, you only do the first one and then you go back to second and do all three? Like, what is the rationale behind that?
Okay.
He's like, I've never been asked that question, but I'll look into it and I'll get, and if I find something, I'll let you know. And so then a few days later, I just opened up the Inner Dimension of Islamic Worship from Ghazali, and he had the best answer actually. So what he said is that if you look at where Hajj stands in the pillars, it's the only pillar that actually has a surah named on, you know, after it. It's very paramount in importance. And if you look at all the other four pillars that we have, when you're standing in prayer, for example, you do takbir al-tahrima, you throw the world behind you, you enter in the state of ibadah in front of your Lord, right? When you're doing sajda, you're bowing down to your Creator, begging Him for forgiveness, for maghfirah, for whatever else that you want. When you're paying zakat, you're actually purifying your own wealth, right? When you're doing sawm, you're again purifying yourself. So with every command, with every pillar that there is, you can fathom a direct benefit to you, right? Hajj is the only ritualistic act, right? You are asked to do this thing at this time, at this place, and if you don't, it's not accepted.
Yeah, sure.
Right? And so by doing this, this is the purest form of you being the abd of your Lord. Your complete submission to His commandment, without any without any understanding for why you're doing this, and you don't even ask that question, right? So when you do something in pure submission, with pure obedience, that you don't even know why you're doing it because you're told to do it at this specific time. It's when you do it with that level of obedience, you get the greatest reward out of it. You come out as a baby. Your sins are all forgiven. So this is a beautiful example that, you know, submission is what it's all about. You can ask yourself, why is it important to not eat pork? You know, I can come up with 20 reasons, and so can the other doctor. Come up with 20 medical reasons why pork is bad. Why should we wear a hijab? Well, you do it because you're asked to do it. I mean, because the whole religion is based on obedience. It's not based on you trying to figure out why it's done. You can do it, and there are things where you, for reflect, you'll find benefits to it, but the core of it is obedience.
Now to speak to real quick to Ifat's point, yeah, I mean obedience comes first, but that doesn't mean necessarily that that's every person's path.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give you an example. You know, in Tuesday night, right? So this nice lady Laura came, very outspoken and opinionated person, came, you know, for Ubaidullah Evans, you know, just to talk. But I mean, she first came and asked me. She's like, well, I'm interested maybe in Islam, and I'm not sure about God, I believe. So she's kind of all over the place in terms of but she says, I have friends that engage in prayer, and I just want to learn how to pray to understand, because I want that feeling, right? So for her, it's like, most people would say, well, okay, before you pray, you got to understand why. You got to know about God and prophet and all these other things, you know? But if I start putting on her all of those things first, she might say, okay, this is a bit much. That might be her path, just to get that feeling first. And then the ibadah, the understanding of it may come later. So, I mean, that kind of speaks to your point. Especially, and we see that a lot here in the United States. You know, that structured sort of thought of believe in God first, and then, you know, that sort of paradigm can be a little off-putting at first, just meeting people in their reality. They may want to take a different path than what we're used to. So,
you brought this point with, you know, the Quran, the paradigm that it's teaching us is to start not with the abstract and then do concrete. Start with the concrete.
Sure.
And this is exactly what it is. You're starting with the concrete without thinking about why. You're doing the concrete act, and through that, you're going to gain abstract if there's things to be done.
I think Nadia.
Just to elaborate on that. So in psychology, there's different theories. So one's called behavioral psychology, which is you do the action first, and then your mind will follow. So if you're depressed, you get up and you
certainly. That's what I was saying. Sometimes your actions have to precede what you feel in your heart. Totally understandable, and I get it. But I felt like in that particular lecture, he was almost the way he was saying it was almost like he was.
Dude, that's pretty.
Yeah. So it was almost as if he was like, you could do acts of worship, and you know you're finding it unpleasant. I don't know. He was just separating the heart from it. I felt like.
I guess the question that comes up, because I've met, you know, people, you know, friends. Let's say friends for like, who will say, I don't pray because I don't feel like, because my heart is not in it.
That's a different story.
But
So she's going with the assumption that you are praying.
But that's where the point goes to. In other words, if he's saying, you know, even if regardless of where your prayer is going, or make sure at least you're doing it first, and then worry about what the next step is and beyond that.
That's right.
But you're speaking of the assumption that I am definitely praying.
Yeah.
And then if a benefit that
It
you're
was almost
drawing
like he
from
was
is
saying it's
peace, that's great.
inconsequential what it does for you. Just do it. But I feel like
I see
that
your
is
point.
a blessing in it, you know?
It is definitely a blessing, but
I don't think that could have been his point.
I think his point is that
don't stop.
the value of the obedience is immense, right? So the fact that I'm obeying Allah Ta'ala by praying is actually a sign that Allah Ta'ala loves me, because He's chosen me to obey Him.
Then, I mean, if it's that irrelevant, then why is it that when someone has a difficulty doing something, like say you don't want to, or, you know, there's obstacles, you actually get rewarded more?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a place for, you
Sure.
know, having an effect, or wanting to or not wanting to do something, you know?
But I think that gives you motivation to do more, right? And it's, you know, and you almost want to get to the level where you're at the single reward level, right? Where it becomes your standard practice.
Interesting.
Okay, yes sir. Hey, John.
Kind of like for a response in that, like an analogy,
Yeah.
it's kind of like homework for school.
Good analogy.
You're told to do it.
Yeah. Like Arabic homework.
Yes.
If you do it,
Side joke.
then you get a good. You usually get a good grade in the class.
Yeah.
But it depends on yourself if you understand the homework.
Yeah, sure. Oh, so I might not understand it as long as I'm doing
Sometimes you don't
it.
enjoy it at all.
Yeah.
That's right.
So if you
Sometimes, only sometimes.
Come on, sometimes.
So if you understand the homework, then you do good on the test. So you can do the homework enough times, and you fail the test, and you get an okay grade. But if you learn from the homework, then you do good on the test, then you get a good grade.
Yeah, so then you get farther. But you're saying you still have to do the homework whether you understand it or not.
To get the good grade.
Just to give you
Yeah, fire away.
an analogy of this whole concept of the the tingling and the touchy feeling and the bells and whistles and the warm fuzzy feeling.
Touchy feely?
The warm fuzzy feeling and all these very special feelings that we get during our worship, these are gifts from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The analogy that I've heard is you are on a journey on a train to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You may have the window seat and you might be enjoying the journey, or you may have a seat away from the window, but you're all going to the same destination. So the person who has the window seat is enjoying the views.
Oh, that's nice.
They're all traveling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the third person who's inside doesn't have a good view, he's still traveling. So the person who's enjoying his salahs, he's having all these amazing experiences, he's going in the right direction. And the person who's obeying Allah, doing his salahs on time, adhering to the obedience, he's also going in the same direction. He's not getting all the the special effects. So, but you will eventually be given as a gift those special warm fuzzy feelings, but you don't pray for the warm fuzzy feelings.
Very nice.
We don't pray for
You don't get on the train just for the view.
Get it every time.
Yeah.
Once you have kids, you realize every salah does not, have the same concentration.
Once you get
But
married.
that doesn't mean because you're not enjoying it as much. You have the choice to miss it.
If you weren't
The way our
divorced.
group is developed.
Yeah, wow.
It's always distracting.
Good ticking time.
It's
Right?
not the same
Your
concentration.
biological.
All right, let us go to the next ayah.
We actually made it past 35.
Yeah, usually we make it through one or two ayahs.
Yeah.
Okay, now a criticism that the Prophet, peace be upon him, used to receive by the rabbis in Medina was, what kind of book is this? Allah is so majestic, and your book talks about spiders, bees, ants, all these insignificant things. So in response, the Prophet, peace be upon him, received these next two ayahs, ayah 26 and 27. Oh, who wants to be our official reader? Anyone?
I can read it.
All right. Whoever has it more easily.
Okay. إن الله لا يستحي أن يضرب مثلا ما بعده فما فوقها. Okay, and Allah disdains not to use the similitude of things, lowest as well as highest. For those who believe know that it is truth from their Lord, but those who reject faith say, what means Allah by this similitude? By it he causes many to stray, and many he leads into the right path. But he causes not to stray except for those who forsake the path, or rebel, right? 27. Okay. Those who break Allah's covenant after it is ratified, and who sunder what Allah has ordered to be joined, and do mischief on earth, these cause loss only to themselves.
Okay, very good. Okay, so what was the response? Inna Allah la yastahyi. That indeed, Allah Ta'ala is not, for lack of a better term, shy or too modest to use examples, to hit you with the examples. Notice the word, daraba. Okay. To hit you with the examples of something as insignificant as a gnat or a mosquito or anything above that. Now, fawqaha is read a couple ways. You think of whatever the smallest bug is, anything above that, or our modern reading would be a bug and even like the bacteria on the bug's head, right? So it is not beneath Allah Ta'ala. He is not too modest to use these to give lessons. Okay. Why? Why is this not beneath Allah Ta'ala to speak of spiders and ants and
It's all his
bees?
creation.
Because even a
All his
galaxy is
creation.
too small for him. If you
And a
want
galaxy
to
then is why would that be? Why wouldn't a galaxy be too small? Absolutely. And so this is the issue that agnostics often fall into. This is the trap that many agnostics fall into, which is that, okay, what's an agnostic? I don't know if God exists or doesn't exist. Okay, and some agnostics fall into the trap of applying rules to God saying that, okay, God is so high, it's irrelevant to him whether or not I pray, right? Because God is so high. This is a friend of mine who was an agnostic. I mean, he subsequently passed away. But and he couldn't get past this, that, okay, I believe that there is something that is called God, and I asked him, so do you pray? He says, no, it's beneath God. It's beneath God to answer my prayers. And then my answer is, where did you get this from? How did you decide upon this? Right? And so what happens very often is people who fall into agnosticism, one level is I just don't know, but some fall into agnosticism by applying a bunch of rules to God that don't work. Okay? And so here the argument is God is so supreme, it is beneath God to talk about these things. And so how do I understand who or what is God? From Allah. Okay? So Allah is saying, no, this is not beneath him. Okay? And then from there, we have two relationships with the Quran. The most basic relationship. فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا فَيَعْلَمُونَ أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ بِرَبِّهِمْ. As for those who believe, as for those who have iman, فَيَعْلَمُونَ, they know أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ, they know that this is the truth, مِنْ رَبِّهِمْ, from their Rabb. So think about this, that my most basic relationship with the Quran is to regard it not only as truth, but the attribute of Allah is Rabb, that it's beneficial truth. It's truth coming from my nourisher. That's my most basic relationship with the Quran. Meaning, I may not understand what any of it means, but I should regard it all as truth. It's all haqq. Alif Lam Mim. I have no idea what it means, but I regard it as haqq, truth, and it's for my benefits. Now, how do you make sense of the other side? وَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. As for those who have rejected, okay, فَيَقُولُونَ, they say, مَاذَا أَرَادَ اللَّهُ بِهَذَا مَثَلًا. They say, what does Allah intend بِهَذَا مَثَلًا, with this analogy? So the people have rejected. The Kafirs are saying, what does God mean by this analogy? Okay. Don't we ask that same question? Right? You know, when we were talking about the metaphors of lightning and everything, we're saying, what does God mean by this? What's the difference here?
They're doing it for mocking and trying
They're
to...
doing it for mocking. These are people who have already rejected. And they're saying in a mocking way, what is God trying to say here? Now this is exactly what you find in contemporary atheist preachers. There's like a little baby here.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay. She's not like roaming the streets, is she? Assalamu alaikum. Okay, so the contemporary like atheist preachers like Bill Maher, Richard Dawkins, I mean he's passed away now, Christopher Hitchens, what's the recurring theme you have from them? That you have to be stupid to believe in religion. Right? That's a recurring theme. How on earth could you possibly believe this? This is the mocking tone that you have in this ayah too.
Karl Marx is the same, right?
Karl Marx at least has some wisdom there. I mean, he says religion is all fake, but it's used to hold people down, right?
Yeah.
Whereas these preachers contemporarily are basically saying, you know, why would you believe this? This is nonsense.
I love how you're calling them preachers.
Yeah, they are preachers. They absolutely are preachers. Yeah. And so the point is that on the one hand you have the believers who regard it as truth, on the other hand you have the kafirs who are basically making fun. Okay? And then here's something very interesting. يُدِلُّ بِهِ كَثِيرًا وَيَهْدِي بِهِ كَثِيرًا. He misguides many with this, and he guides many with this. Okay? Or he lets many go astray with this, and he guides many with this. So what is this? This can either be these analogies, or this can be the Quran itself. So think about this. That Allah Ta'ala, through the Quran, guides many. That's the easy part. But through the Quran, He may let many go astray. How?
They don't believe in the unseen. I mean, they don't satisfy those first few requirements.
So essentially, they're not going in with the right intentions.
Yeah.
Right? If my intention is to surrender and to be guided, then my path is going to be guidance. If my intention is, as we saw with the kafirs and the munafiqs, is to fool, then what does it say? Allah Ta'ala is going to let them continue along on the road. Right? But then, there's a point here. وَمَا يُدِلُّ بِهِ إِلَّا الْفَاسِقِينَ. He does not let anyone go astray, except for the fasiqeen. So, before we define the fasiqeen, his default state with everyone, related to your point about the palaces in Jannah for those, his default state with everyone is guidance. So the key to misguidance, he does not let anyone go astray, except for the fasiqeen. So what is fasiq? So etymologically, a fasiq is the analogy of, think of a river whose water is bursting beyond the banks. Okay. So what is a fasiq? A fasiq is a rebel. Okay. So think of this literally as the opposite of the muttaqi, the person of taqwa. Because what does the person of taqwa do when walking through the forest? You bring your jacket close. What is the fasiq? I don't care. You just let it all loose. Okay. The fasiq is worse than the munafiq. So the fasiq is the rebel, the munafiq is the hypocrite. Why? Because the munafiq still has shame. Munafiq does not want you to know that he or she's a munafiq.
So
Fasiq doesn't
kafir,
care.
and then munafiq, and then fasiq is like the absolute worst.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're all like levels of bad.
Yeah,
But,
right.
so the fasiq is someone who has no problems showing off their sins.
Yeah.
So think it's one thing, it's bad to do a sin, and we seek forgiveness, but it's vitally important that when you commit a sin, you don't tell anybody. You keep it secret. What's the problem of advertising your sins?
It lightens the sin.
Yeah, it lightens the sense that this is a horrendous thing. So if I say, "A'udhu billah," I do this, Muhammad says, yeah, I do this too, right? Okay, suddenly you've decreased how repulsive it is. And you can reach the point, if it becomes enough conversation, that it becomes normal behavior. Yeah, everybody does it. Right, that type of thing.
Can you argue that if you don't, like, say, it's kind of like, I don't know, let's say you're an alcoholic and you're doing that within the confines of your home. So
Yeah.
nobody knows. If you don't
Yeah.
tell anybody, no one can help you with it.
So if it's the case where I'm committing something wrong and I'm seeking help, that's a different thing. Different than me advertising.
And
Like,
mocking
yeah,
the
or
wrongness of it
boasting
something?
that what I'm
boasting
doing.
for it, yeah.
Right? So someone says, well, why should I go to Juma? I drink booze. Okay. Well, we say, well, that person's at least consistent. No, it's you're showing off your sins. Right? And then you're using this bogus logic. Well, if I don't do this, then I shouldn't do that either.
Yeah.
Right?
I feel like in a day when social media is so puts everybody's everything out there, their social activities, bad
Yeah.
and good out there, it's really important to take that point into consideration, you know, that you should, that's a very, you know, good point. And we should really take that to heart and like put that into practice, you know, because I feel like that the social media, what it has done is it's people are advertising their good deeds as
With all
well
the
as their
photos.
bad deeds.
Yeah.
And now there's our society as well as our ummah is where it's at, you know, because it's decreased,
Because of social media.
it's desensitized us to so many things.
You know, I
Almost where it's at because of
Or,
Facebook.
Mary raising your hand?
No.
Oh, okay.
you know,
Same.
I think the best way to characterize and to really understand what it means to have taqwa is to have sohbah with people who have taqwa, right?
Excellent.
And so I didn't really recognize the importance of this until during the Hajj experience. So a couple of things. Number one, you know, we had a lot of sheikhs there. Muhammad Salah was pretty solid, Sheikh Rida. And there was this other guy, Salah Sawi, who's like the sheikh's sheikh. And he's actually written fiqh books that the students at Medina University actually read his books during fiqh. And so I just kept my eyes on this guy, and like, so whenever he's talking to other people, I mean, he's talking, right? But when people leave him and he's on his own, his lips are constantly moving. I mean, he never spends even a minute without actually doing zikr, right? And
you're assuming he's doing zikr.
I mean, because his lips are moving.
Could be like cursing.
Yeah, like I mean, this is what he's doing. His just lips are and he's got the tasbih and he's doing this, right? Constantly, right? And so then Muhammad Salah gave us a story, which is an amazing story. You know, he said his sheikh, who was the guy who taught him tafsir, you know.
Yeah.
So this guy was like the master of tafsir in his university, in his school, right? And so he said one day he walked into his room and he wanted to ask him a question while the sheikh was preparing for the next lecture. He walked in and he literally counted 42 books were open in preparation for one lecture. He counted, right? And he said, you know, in this day and age, you know, let me teach you a way of doing this so you can get this done a lot faster and it's a lot easier. And he's talking to computers, like, you know, you can have a big screen open, you can have multiple, and every single book you're reading actually has a PDF version of it, and you can open it up and you can have all these pages open, you'll get it done a lot sooner. And as soon as he heard the computer, he's like, absolutely not. I want to have nothing to do with the computer.
Okay.
And he's like, why? He's like, someone once told me that the computer is shaitan. You know, the computer is shaitan, you know? And so, I mean, obviously we use it for our benefits for when we need it, but here is a man who's gotten the shroud so close to him that he doesn't even want the chance that the shroud could be let loose so the thorn could attach to it, you know?
I mean, to just so that people don't mischaracterize the shit, what he was saying is that he asked a question. I've heard that sometimes when you're going through the computer, you inadvertently see things that you're not supposed to see. And so he said he was asked, I was like, that happens a lot. I'm just worried that I won't be able to resist it. He's actually worried. His state of mind was such that he's not worried that he doesn't think he's above, even though he's the sheikh who reads 42 tafsir, he doesn't think he's above temptation. Unlike most of us, we think, oh, of course, we'll just blow by it. We won't worry about, of course, we'll see it and we'll just shut it. It's the first look. We'll just shut it off. No problem. He's worried that he won't get past that state of temptation. That's why so it's not that he didn't tell Muhammad Salah to stop using the computer.
Yeah, that's right.
He just said, I'm just worried that I won't be strong enough to handle this.
And that character, I think, is the character of someone like Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right? Muhammad Sallallahu is telling us that he used to read Rabbana Atina Fid Dunya and the Ya Muqallib al-Qulub, Adhkar. I mean, this is the one that he recited throughout the day. He's reciting this Adhkar that says, "O turner of hearts, make my heart firm on Deen," right? This is a man who had the black spot removed from his heart. Even Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is afraid that his heart is going to turn the wrong direction, and he recited Ya Muqallib al-Qulub throughout his day. And this is the Prophet who was worried that his heart is going to turn the wrong direction, right? And so the higher level you are, the more taqwa you have, the more you fear that you're going to lose it.
Absolutely.
And the more the shaitan is outside.
Yeah, or Dr.
Adam alayhi salam can be tempted. Nobody's immune.
Nobody's immune.
Yeah, go first.
The way that I've been approaching this.
You know what's weird? It's like from here.
I know. Turn the computer off. I was going to say. I can't hear it. Yeah, I said the same thing. I'm like.
And these two, this one and this one.
Yeah.
So what I've been finding is uncovering the secrets about myself, things about myself that I didn't understand or know about before, about what my deepest motivations are. And they're scary. So as I uncover that, and I see how those motivations have infiltrated and infiltrate every decision I make and have made in my life, it gets scary. It's like I could just do this again. I could, I could make a mistake. I could make a decision based on that again, rather than based on what Allah has, asked of me or told of me. So, so that, exactly what you're saying, for me, I know other people may not experience it this way, but for me, it is understanding myself and my own motivation that causes that, fear. It's not like, oh, I can't do anything. It's just caution. It's like I really have to constantly wrap myself in Allah and constantly remind myself, La ilaha illallah. This is my motivation is Allah. My motivation is Allah, and to really just wrap my heart in that. So.
Yeah.
To quote Dr. Omer, to know yourself is to know God.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So now we have definitions of the fasiq, 3 attributes. So again, what is the fasiq? The fasiq is the opposite, the polar opposite of the muttaqi. A kafir is the opposite, munafiq is the opposite, but the fasiq is the polar opposite. And I'll illustrate why in a moment. So 3 attributes in ayah 27. الَّذِينَ يَنْقُضُونَ أَحْدَ اللَّهِ مِنْ بَعْدِ مِيثَاقِهِ. So they break their pact with Allah after confirming it. Attribute number 1. Attribute number 2, وَيَقْطَعُونَ مَا أَمَرَ اللَّهُ بِهِ. So they split what Allah Ta'ala has ordered not to be split. And then number 4, وَيُفْسِدُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ بِهِ أَنْ يُوسَفْ. وَيُفْسِدُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ, and they create corruption in the earth. Number 3. So number 1, they break their pact with Allah after confirming it. Number 2, they split what Allah has ordered to be joined. Number 3, they corrupt the earth. Now initially, what does it mean to break the pact with Allah after confirming it? So let's go really briefly to Surah 7, Ayah 172.
Surah 7, you said? 172?
Surah 7, Surah Al-A'raf, Ayah 172. Yes, please. I think it's 172.
172 or what?
I think it's 172. Sorry, I'm still doing it. Yes. Okay. So this is a moment that actually the Muhammad was referring to just a few moments ago. Some point in prehistory, before all of our births, it says what? Okay, and when your Lord took from the children of Adam, from their loins, their descendants, and then made them testify, am I not your Lord? Alastu bi rabbikum. And they said, Bala, we have testified. And why? Why is there mention of this? So that you can't say in the day of judgment that we were unaware. So what is this taken? What is the point that's taken here? That at some point in our prehistory, every single one of us testified to Allah Ta'ala that He is our Rabb. And from here we have the concept of the fitrah. The fitrah that everyone is born on a primordial, pure state, and your natural design in your fitrah is to have a relationship with Allah. Your natural design in your fitrah is to have an innate sense of right or wrong.
Wait a sec, can you repeat that first part before you said about the natural innate state? What was the part before that, the first part you said?
The ayat itself, where you, in other words, where all the souls are lined up in front of Allah before they even came down to, and they all testified that Allah is your Lord, and it comes that's in the Quran. So in other words, this is even before my Lord is Allah.
This is something that we're hardwired with.
And that Prophet is our last prophet?
No, not that.
That's not part of this text.
It's not part of this.
And
so that's the covenant that we're referring to as being broken by the...
So this is one covenant, which is this pact that we have with Allah Ta'ala, right, this confirmation. And then, but what is taken from this? Our fitrah, that we're hardwired, our default state is to have a relationship with Allah. Our default state is to have a sense of right or wrong. And that can also get corrupted and then purified. So that's one understanding of breaking the pact. Now we've already made this commitment to Allah Ta'ala, that you are our Rabb. So one understanding, going back to Surah Al-Baqarah, going back to Surah 27, is this pact. Another understanding would be something more simple. For example, every time I recite Al-Fatiha, and I'm saying, Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'een, you alone we worship, you alone we ask for help, I'm making a commitment to Allah Ta'ala, right? That you alone will I worship, and you alone will I ask for help. Okay? And so if I'm making this commitment to Allah Ta'ala, but I'm turning my back on Him, same thing. Okay? Or, to lesser degree, that every time you make a promise to Allah, oh Allah, if you give me this, I'm never going to do that. Right? You know. But the key thing is the covenant of Alast, the one from that surah. Second one, they split what Allah has ordered to be joined. What is this? Family. Right? If you break your relations with your relatives without cause, this is a pathway to misguidance. In our era, this is scary. Right? If you break your relationship with family, with relatives, there's even a narration, there's even a hadith, that if you break your relationship with Allah, Allah breaks His relationship with you. Allah talks to that relationship and breaks that relationship with you. Okay? That's very frightening. So the first one is your relationship with Allah, your second is your relationship with people, your third is your relationship with the world. If you cause corruption in the world. Okay. So what is the key to misguidance? What is the key to misguidance? Misconduct. That's a common element in all of these three. That my default state, if I don't do anything, that's not a path to misguidance. It's when I do misconduct, that's the path to misguidance. What if I do misconduct? What should I do? Seek forgiveness, turn back to Allah. Right. So what does it say about these people at the end? Ulaika humul khasirun. These people are the losers. What did it say about the people of taqwa? Ulaika ala hudam min rabbihim. They are the people on whom is guidance. Wa ulaika humul muflihun, and they are the successful. Here it says literally the opposite. Allah Ta'ala does not misguide anyone. He does not let anyone astray, except for the fasiqs. And these people are the losers. So this is the polar opposite of the person I'm talking about.
Can you go over again? So the second characteristic of
Okay, so the first one is they break the pact with Allah after confirming it.
Right.
The second one is that they split what Allah has ordered to be joined. So primarily, this is your relations with people, starting with family. Okay.
So the people who basically create fitna within families.
Meaning, it can, if I'm breaking my relationship with family members without cause, then by definition it's creating fitna.
Even with cause, you're not supposed to break.
With cause, I mean, because the Prophet, peace be upon him, I mean, his fight against Kuffar, they were his cousins, right? You know. But in the normal situation, yeah, I mean, the cause has to be something very, very severe. Yeah.
What defines a cause, though?
That's a good question, right? I mean, think of this as levels, and that's my answer for half the questions anyway. But the basic point being that there are some relatives that you spend all the time with you can. There are some relatives that you realize that, okay, when you're spending time with them, it's harmful. So you still don't break your relations, but you might still see them once a year.
But, you know, here we're seeing people break relations because of money and jealousy.
And sometimes even small things.
That's not cause, you know.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I would, a few things to think about that when you're spending time with a person and it is leading to more harm than benefit, that's something to consider.
Why do you suppose if it is something that may harm your iman, you know, by being with certain individual or whatever, why is it that you can't break it? Why is it that you can't break it? You know,
why is it that you can or cannot?
Why is it that you cannot break that relationship?
Well, in terms of your iman, it's one thing if they're preventing you from doing things, right? It's another thing if they themselves don't do it.
Like for example, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he never really broke ties. I mean, he still felt
It's
a
more like they broke
relative
ties with him.
kinship. They broke, yeah. He still felt a kinship even with, you know, Abu Lahab, for example. You know.
Think, for example, what's the first masjid in Islam?
Quba.
Masjid Quba. Why? Because the Prophet, peace be upon him, on his way in the Hijrah, he had to stop to visit family. He had to stop to visit relatives. He had relatives that lived there, and that's why he stopped in Quba. Right. Even then, Hijrah, he's on the run for his life. He still stopped to visit family. SubhanAllah.
I mean, so I guess the lesson to take from it is there's just deep-rooted, hardwired sensitivities that we have to have.
Yeah.
And Allah knows us best, and He told us not to break this pact. And there's something in there that I don't understand. You know, I mean, if someone's really,
I have a student.
Like if you have a lahab in the family, like why would you want to meet him once a year? Why would you want to meet him once a year? You know.
But,
impossible, but that's okay.
No, but you know what I mean, though, right? Like someone who.
No, I mean, I have a student. She's a convert. And she says that whenever certain relatives come over, like her brothers, specific brothers or sisters, they steal stuff from her house.
Oh, wow.
And so she still invites them over, but she makes sure there's nothing that they can steal, right?
Wow.
And she kind of watches them like a hawk. Right?
Wow.
Yeah.
The Sunnah tells us that if they break ties, you join ties. That's what the Hadith says.
Yeah, essentially, right? I mean, it's one thing if they're breaking ties off with you.
So you said these were attributes of
The faucet. Yeah. And the third one is to cause corruption in the earth. Fasad in the earth, you can read a couple ways. One is fasad socially, to cause corruption socially.
So wait, so fasad is...
Fasad is corruption.
Corruption.
Is that the same thing as facade? Like facade? That's like a Daisy term.
I don't think it is. People who know more will do them.
Yeah.
Facade.
Really? See, because I would guess my parents would use that word with me more, and they haven't used that stuff.
So what's yusala? What would that be?
Yusala is like to bring things together. So, Amarallahu bihi an yusala.
Sorry.
Wasala is like to connect.
Oh,
Yeah.
so like wasal is the doorway to, okay, entrance.
I was trying to put, finally, because I was mishearing the word first. I thought it was from salah, from the but no, then I misheard
In
it.
terms of
Yeah,
early
so-
etymology, it's connected.
Right.
And related to how the letters play out.
Right.
The word itself is not so.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, and so these people are the losers. So the default state that Allah Ta'ala has with everyone is guidance. The key to losing that is misconduct. Keep in mind, misconduct and you're not turning back. Okay. It's one thing if I do wrong, all of us do wrong in whatever capacities, but then we seek forgiveness from Allah. This is the person who is turning away and is not turning back. Yes, ma'am.
I actually have a question. Some people told me that, like, we were talking about, like, taking care of the earth and, like, recycling and all that stuff. And someone pointed to this ayah and they were talking about how, like, you should, like, you know, care about your, like, obviously everyone cares about, you know, your carbon footprint and, you know, making...
I don't think too many people care about that.
Okay,
More
fine.
people from your age group than my age group.
Fine, like, you know,
Yeah.
like, making less impact on the earth and stuff. And so, is that what this ayah is kind of can also...
In a contemporary reading, we would say that. In terms of fasad in the earth, more often refers to moral corruption,
Okay.
right? But it does not exclude that. And I'm using that in terms of the history of Islam, that there was a lot of what we would today call environmental consciousness that was just taken as part of fiqh. Even think about the slaughtering of the animal. Now we just focus on that short period of pet, right? But the proper way of slaughtering is the whole process from the birth of the animal to the way the animal's treated, to the way the animal's treated in the last week, where commonly you would separate the animal, put like a cold thing on the animal's head to calm the animal down, and then you go in, right? And so,
if you break it up into the thing that influences people to be a certain way, there's shaitan, right? And then there's this certain, besides shaitan, like the influences to make decisions, right? So I'm sure Sufis have a good way of explaining this, but I wanted to hear from you. So what is it that I mean, is it the shaitan that's causing it, or is this person is just inherently like a bad person, or?
Let's start with this question next week, inshallah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because I can give you kind of a long answer.
Okay.
Inshallah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, any last questions or thoughts, inshallah? Okay, so let's stop here. Next time, inshallah, we'll make it through ayah 28 and 29, and we'll get into the origin of the story. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. سبحانك اللهم, glory to you, O Allah. وبحمدك, praise and gratitude are to you. نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت, we bear witness there is no God but you. نستغفرك, we seek your forgiveness. ونتوب إليك, and we turn to you. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. Okay, may Allah reward you all, and we will continue inshallah next week.